maybe he should take a dump. As soon as possible, he should be possible.
All right, perfect. All right, this is wow, this is a big deal. You're on the show. We're just going to start right off. This is Rip Cronk, world-renowned muralist, artist, beer drinking buddy back at Danny's. Welcome to the show, Brett's with Friends. We're just gonna get right into it.
Great, glad to be here. I'm not sure what kind of stuff we can cover.
Let's try
I brought a couple of pictures that I can show you.
Okay, let's start first of all because this is pretty casual, unscripted. I'm just gonna. Can we go to learn a little bit more about you? And I don't want to ask you questions that you've already been asked a bunch of times. So I'm gonna try to make it unique. And can you tell us how you got into painting and art from the beginning, and then we'll go all the way up to your mural work, pretty much covering all of Venice and any other places you want to mention that people might not know that your work can be found, like mural wise. And I don't know, just give us the whole Rip Cronk. We're with Rip Cronk, artist.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering what we were going to do with this. This is kind of sad. I've sort of always been the artist. And back in high school, I was the guy that did the yearbook and painted the gymnasium floor logo and that kind of stuff. And I always thought, I'll go do other stuff, but I always sort of came back to art. And that fit me. And I have a couple of degrees, right? One from the University of Florida and one from the University of New Mexico. And let's see, I came through art school about the time that modernism was coming to an end in the early 60s. And by the late 60s, we were already sort of going into what's considered historically the postmodern period, which is where the sense of vibrance of modern art was gone, and it became more of an academic, intellectual process. And I couldn't give up on the idea that art had a not intrinsic value, but subjectively realized value. You wanted to go kind of experience art, right? And because I kind of grew up with those kind of experiences. So after graduate school, I just went bohemian and moved into, started living in coffee shacks in Kona for a couple of years. And then kind of came back to the real world, which was Oahu, and got a job in a t-shirt shop, airbrushing t-shirts. And that's kind of where it all started. Because from there, I got the opportunity to do a cedar mural in Hawaii back in 1978. And that one got so much controversy over it that I sort of realized the power of what art could do in the public. And briefly, the story on that was I had to go through a lot of meetings because this is Hawaii and they're very protective of their culture, as they well should be, because it's been robbed from them. And I was trying to do something that sort of paid homage to their culture, which was my culture too at the time, because that's where I was living. And I did a picture of a Princess Kailani. Now, Princess Kailani is half Hapa and half British, actually. And she's very renowned. So I painted a picture of her on the side of a fire station. It was beautiful, but it cropped the top of her head like this because I had her real close up, right, with the scene going on behind her. It's all very storybook-like image, so it was very little be offended by it, but they were offended. Some people were offended because I cropped the top of her head off. That was like where her brains and soul was, or whatever. So it got to be a lot of controversy, and some people wanted me to take it down. So it got on the radio and in the newspaper, and I was willing. I kind of stood my ground there because I had already gotten everybody's permission, and and everybody loved it, right? So the public was well behind it, sort of staying there, and it did, but it didn't stay very long because. At that time, murals weren't very well known about. So we were making up what we were supposed to do for finish coats and that kind of thing. So it only lasted for about 10 years, but it was a wonderful piece. And the sort of splash that it made, everybody loved the mural. So it's not like it was there and disliked. It was beautiful and it, well appreciated. But it showed me that two things. One, when you deal at that scale, right? So if you're doing something that's 65 or 30 feet tall or something large, then you actually have a power to impact people. You get to wow them, right? Because if you do something that other people can't do, they see it, they go, "Oh my God!" So it has that kind of power, which I was hoping for, and it's sort of it's culture, and it works directly with the people. Right? It's just like it's both popular culture and fine art culture. That's where they come together, right? So there you go. So that sort of got me going, right? And from there, I did another sort of close to a dozen murals around Oahu, and then I moved to Venice, California, for the first time in 1979 or 80, and I put up Venice on the Half Shell, which turned out to be a fairly famous mural in its own right. And then shortly after that, what did I move to?
Can I ask you a quick question about the half shell mural?
Yeah.
Which has been in movies, commercials, everywhere. It's been. What do you mean by history is myth?
Yeah. So in fact, there was 3 versions of that painting done. First one was done on the side of the pavilion in Venice. And 10 years later, I went back and that one was all dilapidated and beat up. So I refurbished it, gave it back to Spark, the company who I made it for, Social and Public Art Resource Center in Venice. And then I painted another one, a much larger scale, the one that you're referring to, on the side of the St. Mark's building and on Speedway in Venice. And that one I had History is Myth written in the top. That one came down 10 years later, and then now there's a new one up now, which also has History is Myth in it. And the same figure, the Botticelli parody figure in the center, is my wife, taken from back in 1978, and that's the same image used 3 times in those videos. Now the idea of history is myth is we're sort of at a period in the culture where all our absolutes are kind of gone, right? Philosophy has shown and logic has shown that even our languages are kind of relative to the culture we live in and the time we live in. So even the ideas we think are principles vary according to the situation we're in. Well, that sort of relativistic nature of it is working its way into the culture, right? Because that wasn't believed back in the period of modernism, right? That's the essence of modernism, is you believed you could get to this stuff that was below the surface, but it was real. Now we know there's nothing there. It's just, you're all on a slippery slope and you're just relative to one another. So there's a different kind of mindset involved, right? I'm sorry, I forgot where we were going with this.
We're just talking about the history is myth, what that meant, and I think you pretty much covered that.
Yes. Yeah, so history is myth. That's the idea of history is myth. Whatever idea of history is sounds good, but it's an interpretation of the facts relative to the culture we live in. Another culture looks at it, they see a whole different history, right? They've been looking at the same set of examples, but even the meanings of what those values are different to them. So it's a, it's the nature of reality is different than how we used to think it was. And that's sort of meant to aim at that.
Oh, thanks. I've always been curious. I've been tripping on acid before and always look at that.
We can drink, right? This is rum and ginger ale.
Oh, sweet. I got Alpha Centauri right here. Cheers. Cheers. Happy New Year. Can we cheers to the
Click.
cheers? But gosh, what a volume of work you've created. I mean, how many murals do you have in Venice in particular? And what are the other locations that people might not know that you have mural work at?
After I trying to think back date wise, around mid 80s somewhere, moved to Switzerland. And I put up a dozen or so murals there. And I moved back to LA in the late 80s and the early 90s. No, I moved to Switzerland around 1990. Oh, fuck, I can't remember. Anyway, about 95, I moved back to LA and put up about another dozen murals in LA. And most of those are still up. And I have other murals spread around, the ones in Hawaii. Those are all gone. And I now live in Philomath, Corvallis area, and I have put up 4 murals here, maybe 6 murals. One of them's 4 pieces, and maybe that's 7. Anyway, so I have murals that I'm doing now here, and I do about 1 a year, and I've done probably 50 public murals.
Wow!
And they it works really well for me. As a mural artist, it's you don't, up until recently, you haven't really been able to make any money painting murals. In America, I paint a mural, at least until recently, I'd take about 6 weeks to paint it. I could charge $5,000, right? And the reason for that is I'm in competition with high school students who are also painting murals for nothing. And in America, the difference between somebody who does really good work and somebody who doesn't do really good work is not that well understood by the public. When I lived in Switzerland, the same mural I could do for $10,000, do it in 2 weeks, and there everybody was happy, right? So there's a completely different mindset about what's going on with art, and which is fine with me. I'm not complaining about that because the field is all through most of my life has been completely open. I go see a wall. If I want that wall, I can get it. So it allowed me to kind of go and do whatever I wanted in a kind of real sense. If you're in a gallery situation, your gallery owner really determines what you do. I mean, you get to make a new piece, but it's kind of got to look a little bit like the one you already got in there. You go off and do this other thing, they're going to scratching their head, you're looking somewhere else, right? So you're really caught in a thing there. As a mural painter, what I do is I just go deal directly with the guy who controls the wall. And if he likes my idea, it goes up. So it's less censorship, not more. The only way that sort of you lose out is you can't do anything that's too in the face. You can be a little bit in your face, but you got to be, you can't be vulgar. You can't be too salacious or something like that, right? I mean, you'll notice if you see my work that in fact I am, but it's, I'm pushing all those edges.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a kind of pleasing the public and pleasing the wall and kind of making it not like what you just said. Does that do you think that compromise, or is that, I hate to use that word compromise, but do you think that
no, there's a different dynamic at work. So when I go up to the wall, it's not like I'm trying to put my idea on there. What I'm trying to do is to find the idea that sort of matches the space and the environment it's in. So like if you do a religious mural in a church, doing a mural that's going to allow these people to have a greater religious experience in that church. So I'm trying to kind of do that same thing everywhere. so that if you get it right, then it becomes an icon of that sort of location. So like the murals in Venice, one of them is a group of half animal, half people. Uh, they're doing a chorus line dance, kind of in a graffiti style sort of look, and it's very representative of Venice and the sort of camaraderie that you sort of feel that's across ethnic and economic hierarchies. Venice has a certain quality to it, and it sort of captures that quality, right? So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, each time, is to find the piece that sort of speaks that spot, right? And kind of what makes my art different is a lot of times an artist will come up with a style or look, and then he shops places to put that look. Me, I do a different thing every wall, or try to.
Yeah, you're those are the
That's it.
horse-headed people sort of dancing around on that wall. It's just and you got the Jim Morrison, of course, which has been postcard central. And gosh, I mean, I can go on and on. I want to ask you so much, but what do you want? I mean, do you ever deal with canvas or anything like that, and or oil and canvas, or besides mural work, what are your other outlets to put your art on or create art with?
Uh, you know, um, uh, as a fine art artist, you spend most of your time in your studio working out ideas, and that's what I do. And so I have canvases, but I throw most of them away. Very few
Oh,
of them are kept. And now what I do now is I do watercolors, and it's the same thing. Like I'll try an image, I'll paint that same image a half a dozen times before I get one I like, and then I just move on to the next thing. And it's just kind of my own thing, looking for opportunities. I did a major show right before the pandemic started. So fortunately, it was over before it started. And I was really happy with it. I have a nice selection of stuff. But, I really don't push that. In order to sort of get that angle going, you sort of have to stay in one location. Not going to happen. Uh, you have to sort of work the gallery scene. Not going to happen. And you have to kind of schmooze around with people and talk the talk. Not going to happen. So, I sort of had the skill set so I could do it, but I don't have the right personality to do it. So the whole mural gig works so much better for me.
mm-hmm. Well, I'm a huge fan, and I as before we got into this conversation, I was like, before we came on, I was like, gosh, I just realized you were such an influence on my graffiti style when I first moved to Venice, because I do oil and acrylic and stuff like that, but I was doing that line work and stuff like that, which I think just was sort of like osmosis, just from seeing your work and how the
Your
line work.
buffalo images, your bison images,
No, they're more like this
I
kind
like
of
those, man. I
stuff.
really like your bison images.
Oh, thanks. They're sort of my blue dog. I needed to. I was doing these paintings that were in cadmium red and oil on canvas, like 10 foot by 10 foot, more realistic than the ones I've been doing that are more graphic-y now. But like with the white undertones, that we created a sort of a realistic line with the red, and then they got smaller and smaller, and I was like, I'm just gonna make them red. I'm just gonna make them red. They're just gonna be red. They're all gonna be individually painted. That'll be my blue dog. My buffalo will be my blue dog. And then I kept on getting people with all sorts of resonating on so many different levels on what the buffalo meant to them, or the bison, depending on region. I've had everybody tell me different stories about the buffalo, and I was feeling, well, I mean, I might as well make these into a graphic, and so I did a silk screen. And then I started seeing that silkscreen image kind of replicated in kind of different forms, people kind of, I guess, copying or whatever. But I'm not the first person to ever paint a buffalo. I mean, that's a cave drawing. And so
Well, that was part of what was nice about them is you carried a little bit of that cave painting quality right into it.
That's what I was trying to do. I wanted to be able to make it universal. And also it's iconic because of the buffalo and the nickel. And that's sort of like sort of where that originated from, because I was doing anyways, I love the buffalo. I'm going to continue to use those as my logo. It's sort of my gateway artwork to, if people open the door to that, maybe they can open the door to other things, but it's, it's representative of who I am. And it's definitely my totem animal besides the hermit frog or the hermit crab. But yeah, it's interesting to get an icon like that and then run with it and then see it, and now I'm seeing more buffalo everywhere, which is the whole point of it, was to get the buffaloes running around again in many forms. And so it's been on TV commercials, and I'm seeing people use it on their hats, like my little hat here and stuff like that. It's more me doing what you're saying about the I wanted to tailor it to my audience. The buffalo happened because I was listening to my audience. They wanted it, so I gave it to them.
So the paintings you have behind you, you have them so they're slanted and catching light. So I can't really see those very well. You need to kind of aim them so they're aimed down a little more. Wait, all of a sudden I can see them now.
Yeah, this is one. This is sort of more of that line work.
I like it. It has kind of an ab-X quality to it. Yeah,
it's that line work, which I really like. It's kind of, some people say, is it airbrush? No, it's all just, that's all brush. But
that's very nice.
Thank you.
I like it.
And then the choppy stuff is the palette knife stuff. It's sort of like funky palette knife, oil on canvas. I'm a big fan of the chunky abstract with palette knife. I think that's where I find my most freedom and painting, is just carving right into it and getting messy with the oil, because it's the color and stuff like that is so rich, and you can get all these sort of almost like I like to combine abstract and realism in a way. That's sort of my goal. But show me some of the ones you got.
I did 4 images around the school. There's another one.
No, he's not seeing that. You're still seeing
I think the cougar.
Okay. Yeah, give me just a second while she loads these up. I didn't know. Well, I'm a complete Luddite with this stuff. Lindy is a computer scientist, so
retired.
Retired computer scientist. So it allows me to stay at the leading edge of all this stuff. But personally, I don't have a clue. So
we have a scientist.
Oh, look, I get this on the case.
Okay, so now you can stop sharing and share a different one.
Okay, so now what are you seeing on your screen?
I see a cougar.
The lion still? The lion.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop that sharing. One, and then I go do another one.
Now you have all those choices.
Okay, so let's do this one next. But this one is one that I did a couple of years ago at in downtown Corvallis, and it's called Cultural Transformation: The Teddy Bear Dance, and it's they're singing the song "Women Are Smarter." It's kind of an old calypso song. Done this version is done by the Grateful Dead, but it was done by a guy named Radio King in the 30s, and Harry Belafonte and a bunch of other people. And each generation, it's one of those songs of empowerment for women. So I thought this was going on during the current administration, I figured this was the appropriate piece to put up for women empowerment in Corvallis, which is sort of, it's not a deadhead community, but it has a strong Grateful Dead component to the community. And right across to the right of where we're looking on the mural is where they have a vegetable market every week all through the summer. And so every Saturday morning and Wednesday morning, people are just crowding down there, going by this mural. So you get all the little kids going by with their moms and stuff. Seemed like the perfect fit to me. But when the mural went up, this one became very controversial. Uh, People were coming up and oh, I came. They were yelling raucous things about it, and I even had one guy say this is culturally fucked up or something. Graffitied it. So it's got a big stir. And one lady was saying that she's afraid her son was going to commit suicide because of this mural.
What?
It's like completely whack stuff. The poor lady who owns the building, her business was threatened because of the mural.
Oh God.
Come on. I mean, it was really meant in good spirits and yeah, it was meant to be a little bit sort of not controversial, but topical. And, it was meant to be in good spirit. And if you look at the actual characters, while they're teddy bears on the front, in the sort of blips behind them as they're kind of moving through space, they're people. So you kind of get to realize that these is kind of a cultural transformation myth, saying that we live in a time where we're all teddy bears and cultural transformation. So it was meant in good spirits and meant to sort of be a very positive piece, but it too found controversy.
Yeah, well, I'm a deadhead, so that's right up my alley. Anything dead oriented is good for me. But it looks like fun. I love the colors. It's whimsical. It brightens up the whole spot. I mean, it looks. How big is that?
It's 100 feet long. It's 18 maybe feet tall, something like that.
That's great.
Notice over here on the left side, just to point this out. See where my little pointer is?
Yeah.
Can you see the little pointer?
I do.
That door is not really there. All this stuff over here is just painted on. So it's just a solid wall across and I just, painted that part to look like it was separate.
That's funny.
Cute, huh?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. It's very funny.
And that, of course, just disappeared into the landscape because it's meant to be seen from this angle. So unless you go up there and actually touch it, you just looks like part of the environment. Let me go on and do another one. I'm just going to kind of point out the ones that I've done here recently. Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. It's so weird how people get uptight about weird stuff, man.
What do you see?
I see some sports being played.
Okay, yeah. So this one is on the side of a gymnasium, athletics building.
Yep.
It's 145 feet long, 30 feet tall. The basketballs are 11 feet across.
Jeez.
Right. These are, so what the idea of the mural here was, they wanted me to represent the student activities, each of the sports, right? So I wanted to, represent each of the sports they wanted to have represented. And I represented the sort of ethnic nature of the community and this is sort of a bell fountain kind of quality I was looking for there. Where it's
yeah, nice.
Coming out like this, right? So I thought the piece was successful. It's enormous, but it has a great big open space in front of it. So there's, that's that.
So I noticed that building is bricks. That's not easy to paint on.
Well, the airbrush doesn't matter. I'm not actually touching the wall, So in fact, what happens here is I'll take and rolled on primer, and then I rolled on an undercoat, so it has thick paint painted on it, and then I airbrush the articulated shapes, and then I roll on a clear coat over it. But I'm real careful not to do the brick, just to do the primered brick that I painted on. It's a nice effect. I have another one of these that I'll show you that I did down in Venice, where I sort of figured out this idea, this technique. Yeah. let me go ahead and close this one.
And do you put a overlay on that to protect the paint?
What I do is these things are all painted with exterior house paint. So it has a regular house paint, primers, house is just the top end stuff. And I shop around the different companies to find the what's called the dark tint base for a particular like latex paint. And I will take and paint it with no pigment on it. And if you do 4 or 5 different paints, they'll all be different levels of clear. And the one that's the most clear, that's the one that I use. And when I get finished, I take and thin it down, but roll another clear coat over it. So it's just the tint base of that kind of paint, but it's done like 3 or 4 layers by the time I've done. So it's a nice thick layer. And the airbrush stuff, while it's a very minute, thin layer, is just in among the other layers, right?
Yeah, pancake.
So I've had murals that have been up for 20 years and look like just like when they went up. So
That's the trick.
Really well. Yeah, so house paint really is the whole deal. And I just mix my own paint, so I have all the colors and everything. Let me show you another one.
Okay.
You don't mind I do this, right? I mean, this.
Oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. This is great. I'm having this is fantastic. I'm having such a good time.
Okay, so yeah, so there's another one done on the brick. This is Abbott Kinney. I only put a few of them up. This is all that I had to show. This one is Abbott Kinney. This is where I figured out that painted on brick technique. And he's 5 stories tall. Venice is the only place where a landscape developer will be sort of become a symbol of a bohemia, right? So this, so he deserved to be on the wall there.
Yeah, I remember the one that was. I was remembering the one that one's across from James Beach.
Yeah, it is.
And
yeah, when I go ahead.
You go. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. So when I painted this with an electric Bolson's chair, and it's like a little orange fiberglass chair that has a pole coming up through it that has about the size of a bread box. Down here is a 220 volt motor, and I hook a parapet clamp 5 stories up above the head of this guy, Abbott Kinney, and the parapet clamp holds onto the top of the wall, puts a little lever out that so it's like a window washer kind of operation, except it's just a little chair. So I get on there and ride up. So when I'm painting that hand, I'm like smaller than the hand. I'm a little bigger than one of these fingers, right? And I'm sitting there painting it. But the painting is at my knees are on the painting, right? Sitting in this little chair with the pole like this, and I'm painting like this. The wall is right here. So when I'm up there painting that eye, the eye is this big, right? So I'm sitting here painting this eye, looking at the photograph. The photograph, it'll be like, it's like a photograph. And in that photograph is the face. In that face, there's the eye the size of a BB. So I have on a second pair of glasses, and I'm looking at the eye like this, and I'm trying to pick out the detail. And I'm over here painting that little teeny dot over here the size of a pie plate. And people ask me how I do it. And the answer is, I have no clue, right? It's just, I get really stoned and I get up there and just, it comes out looking like that. The trickier part really is when you're down here on the pants and you just have these real subtle shapes. How do you do that subtle shape when you're standing there this close to it? I don't really know how the answer. You don't get to step back and take a look until the end of the day. Oh, here's the fun part. Telling you the story about this mural is in Venice, you can't leave the electric Bolson's chair down on the ground level. it won't be there the next day. So as a result, I would drive the postage chair up to the top. And when you get up to the top, you're still 5 feet from being on top of the roof, right?
Yeah.
So I would climb out up on top of the roof. That part was the easy part. It's in the morning when you come in, that chair's 5 feet down, 5 floors up. So now I'm sitting on the side of the wall like this, and I hop down onto the bosun's chair. First time you do that, it's pretty freaky. But when I go up in the evenings, the parking attendants across the street who did the valet parking for James Beach, they'd over there, I think they were making bets or something if I was going to make it or not when I climbed over the top. I'm not sure, but I know I was drawing a crowd every evening when I did that.
So do you use how do you graphic this out? Like, do you do a,
Oh yeah. So like the photograph that I'm holding like this and I'm drawing like this, on that photograph are squares, right, that are drawn in by ink. And on the wall, well, in this case, what I do is I do the squares to line up with the bricks on the wall. So I just count the bricks, but it's basically a grid. So when I'm ready to put the eye in place, I know where it goes, right?
Yeah.
But it's still that little dot, right? So, but I kind of get everything located. There's, in terms of art style, this is not photorealism. This is just plain old artist painting portraits, right? Portrait artists. Photorealism is where you take and you take those grids and you paint in the grid exactly as the grid is. So you're actually in the end kind of doing a really big paint by numbers, and so it's a different technique and look. When you get up close, you can see the difference. Right?
And how do you do that shadow? That's pretty impressive. That's
the shadow on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how I said that I just picked the deep tint base that's the most clear. So I take that deep tint base, I just add a little bit of blue gray color to it, and it makes that color of the shadow. And then I just paint it on there. It was a clear primer, so I could just, it was, looks great, but it was easy cheap. So I look for opportunities to do things that I haven't done before. And what I've sort of discovered that where the sort of pleasure of doing this for me, where you would think, being involved with other people and trying to make all that, that's just kind of in the way. But for me, that turns out to be kind of fun. So I'm looking for different ways to kind of engage the community and to involve them in the process. And in the process, I kind of get to kind of get everybody's idea, and then it kind of filters through me, and that's how these ideas sort of come up. And one of the murals in Venice that's fairly well known is called "Homage to a Starry Night." It's a parody of Van Gogh's Starry Night, done in a slightly graffiti style, and it was put up in 1990, I think. And each it gets graffitied every year because it's right there where it gets hit. So I go back every year and sort of basically repaint it and do it in a slightly different style. So over 30 years, it's had a dozen different looks. And last year actually the year before last, 2 years ago, it got hit completely trashed 3 times by the same group from, I think, somewhere in LA, come out there. I know it's the same group because I get the same report every time, both from the indigents and the building owners and stuff around, that it's a group of about 8 or 9 guys, and it's all sort of gang related. And you get a lot of that, especially at night around Venice. It's kind of a focal point, because it's out there where it is. It's kind of a mecca in its own way. And the gangs will come through. And I know there must be violence out there, and I don't know how they deal with it. Back in 1990, I did a project, and it hasn't really changed, particularly since then, was a steel doors project where I got the rights from the building owners to have graffiti artists come in and paint their doors at night legally, with the idea I bring the paints and I'm out there with them, and if a cops come by or something like that, I'm there. And we did about 30 murals. So this is a whole nother story. So I just sort of switched over to tell you. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell you the story. So I get out there, and what happens? I'm painting those murals up around Venice back in 1990, and I meet all these guys because they come up and introduce themselves like that. So I in there, and I came up with this idea, right? And what happens with this is it gives these guys they're mostly, oddly enough, 13 to 18 kind of guys. They're young, and they're the ones that are the smartest, the most chutzpah. They're talented, and they're peripheral, looking how they can, be part of society. You can see it happening, right? So this was our opportunity for them to do something that, instead of being looked at as being graffiti, was looked at as being graffiti art and was there for a purpose. So it sounded like a great idea, and it worked just like that. I was completely stoked with it. The problems that we ran into were, one time, in fact, several times, at night we'd be out there painting. These would be kids who were out at night doing this anyway. So they were actually more familiar with this stuff than I was. And it would be like, one, two or three guys would come up and we would do a project. And then if a gang would come through, these guys would be like 15 guys, right? Sometimes they'd be Hispanic groups, sometimes they'd be mostly Black groups, but they'd be all young, all carrying, and you knew it was dangerous. And you just kind of stand there with your hands down while they walk through and spray with some of your cans a little bit, and then they move on through and you let them go. And that's about how you dealt with it. And other times we have cops come through and we all be down on the ground with and I'd be, here's the paper, we belong here, got a little of that too. So, but it was very successful in terms of how it worked. And one of the guys, I had a mural that was a picture of a cop. And of course, a picture of a cop in Venice, it's going to get hit by graffiti. So every time it get hit, I'd go back and repaint it. I knew it was going to get hit, but the idea was I was looking for a particular look, because at the time, what I was doing realistic paintings and working abstract stuff over it. But what I was doing graffiti stuff over it. So it looked like I was graffitiing some painting that I had, which is in fact what I was doing. So I was waiting for somebody to do that in the way that I was doing it. And along comes this guy called Gesso, that's his tag name, who did exactly that all over the cop. And I look at it and I go, oh my God, that's perfect. And so I left it up until I got such an outcry from the city and building owners that I had to take it down, but it hit just right. But so I, in fact, he wouldn't let himself be known since he was graffitiing my work, but I let him know through other people that if he wanted, he could come down and do one of those projects. And he did. And I had to act like I didn't know what was going on. But my biggest job that time was to protect him, because his MO was he went around and graffitied other people's graffiti. Now that has become a kind of a big deal, but back then that was not a big deal and that was not appreciated. So, we were out there kind of protecting that kid to get out there. And I was hoping that this would have that same positive effect I was talking about on him, but it didn't. The story is, I heard later, a couple of years later, he was in fact killed in LA because of the shenanigans he was doing. And
he was killed.
It was kind of arty. Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of a rough deal. Yeah, I got other rough stories like that actually.
So what do you we're gonna make this a two-parter, because if you can stand a little bit longer and keep on talking, because we're already over our line of time. But like, where like the graffiti park situation, were you part? Did you ever do anything over there when that was going off?
You want me to, well, I can tell you the whole story on it if you want.
Sure.
As long as we got plenty of time.
Now we're opened up. This is a two-parter. Two parts.
Yeah. So yeah, back, I think in the 70s, the pavilion was put up over there. And it was done with a different kind of social engineering. Nowadays, you got to have everything up. You can't have tunnels or enclosed areas or, that's all in the past. Now it's got to be where you can see it, or because that's a different reality. So this thing was like, had a great big garden area with a wall around it, right? Yeah. And your idea is you go in there and you have the little fireplace and you cook, and one of those fireplaces I think are still there now. But the story on that is that became so dangerous, and Spark, the same organization that I've done murals for, had done murals all around the inside of it. They were really cute, beautiful murals. But that place was destined to become just a graffiti area, and it just became famous for it. And for a while, because of the way it was all enclosed, so large as like the size of a couple of tennis courts size, enclosed area, it became known as the Pit of Death. I don't know if anybody ever died there, but that was just the name that it had gotten because it was such a very dangerous area to even be. So that had to come down, but it took a long time to bring the pavilion down, that was part of it. There was other pieces. My mural, the original Venice on the Half show, was on the front of that pavilion.
I want to interject real quick because that pavilion had a stage and tables. Yeah. I'm gonna put a photograph. I'm gonna put up a photograph that I took of that when I first moved there. That's in 35 millimeter. But they when they took that thing apart, man, those gravel trucks came in with those they had like stairs of they made that stuff into rocks, and they just like completely like eradicated it. Like they made it into little tiny pebbles and put it into things. And I think they redistributed those pebbles someplace else. But what a massive undertaking. Okay, I wanted to just interject that because that was my own little personal feeling about it. Because when they were taking it down, it was pretty amazing.
It was a really badly thought out idea, so it was nice for it to come down, but it became part of the culture. So it was, it took a while for them to kind of pull it together to do it for whatever reason. But in the process, that garden area with the stage became so famous for its graffiti activity that it was written into the charters of the Coastal Commission when they took the building down that they leave these walls up for graffiti to be put on. Those walls are still there, and they're still being painted today. And it's a really wonderful idea from beginning to end. Now, let me tell you the good and bad side of it. Okay. Those walls became such an important feature of the graffiti art community that it became the place where everybody had to go and put up a piece. It was famous in their literature and websites and that kind of, and it had become this sort of cultural sort of vortex. It's this like powerful thing, and I was all for it. The difficulty of it was, you know how I was saying back in the 1990, it was like one guy in 100, or one guy in 50 maybe. His MO was to graffiti other people's art, other graffiti artists' art. Well, that number got to be a little more than 1 in 50, but it's not the matter of what percentage. It was a matter of how many people were now doing graffiti. So that spot became so popular that after a while, you would be out there in the summer, and it would take 3 or 4 hours to put a piece up. They'd take photographs. The next troop was sitting there on the grassy knoll waiting for them to be done so they could take that part of the wall. Well, there's like 5 or 6 places on the walls, right? So these are all going on all around those walls all day long, all summer, right? With groups of other people waiting to put their piece on. So they go through 3 or 4 images in a day on each spot. It was amazing. And I thought it was fantastic, but the bad side of it was that one guy in 50 who does other people's art is also spraying the palm trees as he comes up. He's also spraying the sidewalk when he comes up. He's also spraying so the entire landscape was being graffitied. That the second roller skate mural, the one that you were familiar with, was down at ground level. And the bottom was done so I could take out graffiti by just splatter painting more paint on it. But during this period, they went nuts. So that the entire piece is above where you could reach. You know, I don't know, they were like on top of cars or something. I have no idea. But they just completely trashed the mural, and I couldn't keep up with it any longer. So I repainted the mural higher up on the wall, which is what's there now. So it resolved that problem. But during that period, the outcry got so great that they had to put regulations on it. So in order to go put a piece up, you had to go see this guy, get a permission slip, and then go do it. I don't understand the specifics of that exactly, but that put a damper on everything. And it still goes on in a quiet way today, but it's nothing like this sort of spectacular event that went on for like a couple of years.
Yeah, I remember seeing you one year doing the slapping of the paint, or the sort of the Pollock sort of,
right,
splashing on it, and you had to put a line up there. I was like, man, it was just like, because I knew you. I mean, that was could be a little frustrating, I think, to do that again. No. To raise the level line of the actual piece and just splatter it with paint, so that it would, because you knew it was going to be graffitied again at some point.
Yes, that's part of the deal in Venice. Is it kind of goes with the territory. And in fact, and some of the pieces were done initially with the idea that when I go back, I splatter over it, leave a little, and then I work other stuff on top of it. So it kind of becomes more of an organic piece. But that turned out in the long run, it became too aggressive, and I couldn't really do that anymore. So, and the idea in Venice is, in fact, the idea of that piece, the roller skate murals, is history is myth. Part of that is it's kind of ongoing. So that you go see the piece one year, after I come back and do graffiti, I'll add another couple of things, so that the mural you see now is not the same mural you saw 5 years ago, because it has other stuff added to it. So that was the concept for the piece, and that went on for a long time. So it was have an organic quality to it that sort of made it all right, And the other mural, the one that I go back and change every year, if I didn't go back and just sort of make up something new each time, then yeah, that'd get kind of old pretty fast. But because I go back and just have fun with it, it's a reason to go down to Venice. I stay drunk, get high, party around. Good. I'm not suffering.
So what are your feelings about, when's the last time you've been in Venice?
Before the pandemic, and now we're in this sort of period in between administrations where we're waiting for the vaccines to actually get distributed and people can start taking them, right? Once I get my vaccine, then I'm back in business. So, I have painted murals locally during the pandemic. So I'm not, not like I'm staying home particularly, but I'm not willing to go down to Venice where they're having an enormous outbreak of the stuff, where I'm going to be staying in hotels and eating in restaurants and drinking in bars. So I'm going to wait until I get my vaccine in the next couple of months. So in the spring, I can go back down there, and the same the same Starry Night mural, which has now been completely painted out. I'm going to go back and put another version on the wall.
I have a picture. I have a picture of my father before.
Again?
I just have a very kinship with that Starry Night painting because my father and me took a picture of he came and visited me, and I hadn't seen him in 17 years. And so we took a portrait together as the Starry Night as a backdrop. So that'll always have a place in my heart, in that particular mural.
That's perfect. That's just what that mural was for. And it's sort of when you're out there painting the mural, and actually when you're not out there, when you're just out there, people are coming out and taking photographs just like you did all the time. Like, there's 300,000 people walking down the boardwalk. Hundreds of people are taking photographs in front of that mural every day, all summer long, for 30 years. That's a lot of photographs. That's I'm in photo albums across the country.
And that's why you are a legend.
Well, it's just part of good fortune, that I was there. There was no murals there when I started, right? There was a couple of murals by Art Squad in their mid early 70s, Schoonhoven maybe being the most famous of them. And but those pieces were coming down. So what they were is you just had miles of beachfront property with no big open walls and white spaces and no murals anywhere. So it was like a big canvas for me. So I put up a 9 or 10 of them the first round that I was there in the 1990s. There you go.